What's up guys, it's Will back again, and today's review is Jack Reacher, Never Go Back. Jack Reacher, Never Go Back is an action film that was directed by Edward Zwick and is a sequel to the 2012 film Jack Reacher. I should also mention that this film is based on the 2013 novel entitled Never Go Back, written by Lee Child. Okay, so Jack Reacher, Never Go Back kicks off when Jack Reacher himself, a retired major in the US Army Police Corps played by Tom Cruise, kicks some ass and then puts a corrupt cop in jail. After this, he gets in touch with his military contact for the case he just closed, which is Cobie Smulders' character Major Susan Turner, and Jack Reacher eventually heads to DC so he can go on a date with her. Well, once Reacher gets to DC, he finds out Major Susan Turner has been charged with espionage after a couple of her soldiers were mysteriously killed, and something seems fishy, so eventually Jack Reacher busts Major Turner out of jail, and the two fugitives of the law attempt to uncover some foul play behind the scenes that would exonerate Major Turner as well as Jack Reacher himself, actually. And the rest of the film is spent primarily with Jack Reacher and Major Turner as they attempt to clear their names of the charges and hopefully bring to light some shady behavior of some government officials while all the while still kicking some ass. Okay, so while the first Jack Reacher film from 2012 wasn't that great either, I think this one is probably a little bit worse, but generally they're around the same area. I'd say they're both okay at best. There are several problems I had with Jack Reacher Never Go Back, but I want to start with the story itself because it doesn't always make a lot of sense. Now this is 100% an action flick, there's really no way around it. Everything that happens ultimately serves as a mechanism to push the plot towards kicking more ass, and sometimes the way the story actually progresses doesn't make a ton of sense. Hell, even the action scenes don't always make a ton of sense. As you probably saw from the trailer, Jack Reacher does things like punch two guys on an airplane and loudly knock them out with literally nobody even noticing at all, and then he'll always without fail pick up on the people following him and just kick their ass too. And really everything he does pretty much always works out for him, and that's sort of a problem I have with his character. In my eyes, he's definitely a Mary Sue, because while you can chalk up his superhero-like abilities and lengthy experience to being a former major in the military police corps, he always seems to be one step ahead of the competition, and he just seems to be better at every single thing he does than anyone else. Now, I'm not entirely sure if the filmmakers were trying to go for that action film feel from the late 60s and early 70s, or they just wanted to have a larger-than-life hero in general, but either way, the things that Jack Reacher pulls off are sometimes questionable in terms of their plausibility. And what this did to me, and will likely do to you as well, is make you question the realism of the story itself. And this becomes problematic because you can't quite immerse yourself into the story the way you'd like to, because this is a movie that is at least supposed to have some sort of basis in reality and be grounded in some way, shape, or form. It's not a fantasy movie or anything like that, so when the characters start doing things that are really ridiculous, be it a dumb move to progress the plot along or an over-the-top action stunt that pulls you out of the story, the movie isn't necessarily being consistent, and that's a problem. I thought the first act was really mysterious and exciting and interesting, but once our duo actually gets on the run, things can start to feel a little bit more like a soap opera with some action sprinkled in rather than an action film with some drama sprinkled in. And depending upon your taste, this may not bug you, but like I've said before, a lot of times whether you walk out of a theater satisfied or dissatisfied with the movie greatly depends on whether your expectations were met that you came in with. In Act 1, you get Jack Reacher just doing his usual roaming around business, and he starts to get a whiff of some shady stuff going on behind the scenes in the military, so he looks into it. And I enjoyed this part of the story, but then in Acts 2 and 3, when you get more details as to what is actually going on, it's sort of anticlimactic and doesn't feel as exciting or fresh as I personally hoped it would. I expected this to be a pretty formulaic film, and it is, but I would have at least liked to see the filmmakers try something a little bit different, and you don't really ever get that. This is pretty much a beat-for-beat remake of almost every older action movie you've ever seen. I will, however, say that I thought the dialogue was very well written and the acting was really on point from every single actor. Although, as I mentioned, at times the story can sort of venture into soap opera-like tendencies, I did for the most part enjoy the interactions that took place between our characters. Everything operates at a pretty quick pace in this movie, and the dialogue is really no exception. Everything the characters say is snappy and quick and to the point, and I actually enjoyed that because it helped lead towards somewhat of an actual identity being present. There's four primary characters that have a legitimate presence in this film, and that's obviously Jack Reacher, played by Tom Cruise, Major Susan Turner, played by Cobie Smulders, Samantha Dayton, played by Danika Yarosh, and an assassin known as the Hunter, played by Patrick Heusinger. So Tom Cruise does a pretty good job in this role. It's basically the same role that he plays in pretty much every action movie he does, but with a little more seriousness and badassery present. I think he is a good fit for Jack Reacher the character, and Tom Cruise does do a pretty good job providing a somewhat layered and interesting protagonist. Cobie Smulders is also very good. She plays a little too much sidekick for my liking, and I would have enjoyed seeing her actually take part in the action more, but with the screen time she was given, she showed that she was the right actress for this role. I really enjoyed her work in How I Met Your Mother too, which is obviously a bit different from Jack Reacher, but I really hope she lands more roles in big movies like these because she deserves it. So as for Danika Yarosh's character Samantha Dayton, all I'll say about her is that she gets caught caught up in this whole conflict pretty unfortunately, and she has to stay with our main duo because of some knowledge or connection she has. I'm trying to be as vague as possible so I don't spoil anything for you, but I will say that Danika Yarosh did a solid job overall. I didn't love her performance, but I didn't hate it either. I would say she's mostly just solid. And finally, the hunter, played by Patrick Heusinger, was sort of just meh for me. I didn't mind the acting performance so much as I did the character. He's another one of those very vanilla, bland bad guys that just does bad things for bad reasons, and you get very little, if any, insight into his motivations or backstory. So when the conflict comes to a head and the two sides face off, I don't think you feel as uneasy as you should because the build-up isn't quite there. I also want to mention that I did really enjoy the cinematography present in this one. I thought the action looked nice on screen and the other non-action shots were as dramatic as they needed to be. There wasn't anything that visually felt out of place or unusual or anything like that. This is a very nicely shot film that I was impressed with from a visual standpoint. I do want to briefly mention the ending though. I really wasn't a fan of it. Our characters do get a definitive resolution, but the climax itself was sort of anticlimactic, and the closure you get isn't really all that satisfying. The story attempts to come full circle, and it does, but it doesn't really feel like our characters were really all that changed in any significant way. But overall, I was fairly disappointed with Jack Reacher Never Go Back. I did think it had some strong acting performances, well-written dialogue, and some very nice cinematography, but I also felt it had a somewhat silly and ridiculous story, a Mary Sue protagonist, poor acts 2 and 3, and an anticlimactic climax and ending. I'm gonna give Jack Reacher Never Go Back a 6 out of 10, and generally recommend you pass on this one in theaters unless you read the book or just love the first film and feel like you have to see the second installment. So did you guys see Jack Reacher Never Go Back yet? What did you think of it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if not, let me know whether you'd be interested in watching this film or not. And as always, if you like this video, click that like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for much more content like this. That's all for now though. This is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next video.